Thank you very much, Courtney. Thank you to the BQE team for getting this organized. So, there's probably nothing more intimidating than speaking blindly to a group of what could be several hundred people, being reminded during the introduction that it's being recorded for others to see and analyze, and that it encouraging you all to share the recording with all of your friends and colleagues. So I'm going to do my best today to hopefully make this somewhat enjoyable. I have sat in your seat many times listening to, professed professionals go on and on and on about their experience and so on. I hope that you walk away from today with some, just some reflective thoughts, some important things that might shape the way you're addressing some of these what are really important topics. But in no way do I consider myself the absolute expert on any of these topics or on anything for that matter. But I certainly have some thoughts that I can share with you. Those thoughts and observations that you'll hear today really have been shaped by many profound mentors of mine. I've been extremely blessed to have people in my life who have helped guide me, teach me, and who have not backed down from telling me the things that I don't want to hear. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I'm not a big believer in, spouting on and on about myself and all of the things that I've accomplished over my career. I think it is important for those of you that are here to learn something or gain some insights, that you kind of know the framework of what I'm coming to you from. I probably have not met most of you. And so I just want to give you a few things to consider. I have started many businesses. Some of them have been as simple as getting an EIN and a bank account number and deciding that it's not going to go anywhere. And some of them have been as expansive as CVG. Some have really succeeded, and many have failed. All of them were small businesses. So my background, my life experiences have been involved in small businesses, some related to healthcare because my family has a strong background in that field, and I have a passion for it. And some related in the restaurant business that I also have a strong passion for, and some nonprofits. But they're all small companies, from just me to CVG's now nearly 20 employees. I've never worked for a publicly traded company, never worked for a big enterprise in a large city. I've had partners in a variety of endeavors. Some of those have been successful and some of those have not been successful. I have been fired before, as I think probably everybody should at one point in your career. I've been sued before, not me personally, but the organizations that I've led have gone through various legal turmoil. I've also been promoted and I've won awards. So, it's runs the gamut, right? It's a career, an evolving career. But I haven't done it all. I'm not a multimillionaire. I don't own my own plane, although I still dream someday of being able to fly private. I've done it a few times, and if any of you have done it, it sure beats commercial. But I don't do that on a regular basis. I haven't reached that plateau of success. No one really knows my name. Nobody asks me for autographs or request photos of me in the media, much to my children's disappointment, I'm sure. I don't have any felony convictions, no laundering money or stealing from companies that I work for. I do have 3 great, phenomenal kids, all grown, still married to this most heroic wife I could have ever dreamed of. She manages a restaurant full-time here locally. We live in a small rural Iowa town, and we've been here for 20 plus years, raised all of our kids here. None of us from here originally in Grinnell, Iowa, come from Little Rock, Arkansas. My wife is from Indiana. We've moved around, had some years in Boston before we came back to the Midwest. But that's the framework I'm talking to you today from. We founded CVG in 2014. So we've been going for 10 years, and we were completely virtual from the very beginning. So the last decade of my professional experience has been in a virtual environment, getting to know many, many architects and people involved in our industry. So when I talk about partners, it's really not a topic I take lightly. I don't trust a lot of people. I'm a social person, and I have friends, but I wouldn't go into business with most of them. I consider a business partnership perhaps even more complicated and strong than a marriage in many ways, because it's tied to so many other things. It's complicated, it's difficult, and like marriages, it doesn't always have an impressive success record. But in a business partnership, it's your professional life, it's your financial future, it's your reputation and your brand. It's all tied to this bond that you create with another individual or individuals. So it is like a marriage. A marriage, if you get divorced in today's world, people kind of understand, right? You two people decided to go in different paths. If your business falls apart, it can be even more damaging personally and emotionally. It can really set you back. So I'm a big believer that language is very important. Let me be clear. That doesn't mean I'm great at it. My wife might tell you that communication is always something I can improve on. But I do really value the importance of having a common understanding of language. So today we're going to talk about this idea of partnerships. What is a partnership, and what are some of the fundamental challenges many of these commitments face, and what are some ideas, some thoughts that I can tell you today that might help you strengthen that or overcome some of those challenges. Also, to be clear, partnerships are not required. In the decade of research that we've done in the small architecture space, because I'm not an architect, so it takes countless hours of learning about the space and what some of those common challenges are. We found many, many, many architects who were sole proprietors, had been sole proprietors, many who had been in partnerships that broke apart and dissolved, and now they're on their own. And many, many of them successful and happy and content. So as I talk about partnerships today, please don't hear me say that that's your only path to success, that you've got to achieve that. There are some pros and cons to both avenues. But today we're going to talk about partnerships. You may see me looking off to the side a little bit. I'm playing on 3 screens today. I also want to encourage you all, please, to ask questions in the Q&A window. I'm going to stop it a couple of times and ask the team that's behind the curtain if there are some questions that I can answer, because that's the only way I keep you people awake, right? I don't want to sit here and talk nonstop without really addressing some of the things that are on your mind. So getting back to the content, I want to talk a little bit about this term partners a little more, just to make sure we're all on the same page. A lot of firms will use the term partner and principal interchangeably. Some firms create levels like associate principals, assistant principals, so forth. In my mind, what we're going to talk about today is a partnership, which really means a long-term commitment, most of the time permanent, almost like tenure as a faculty member. When you become a partner of a small business, again, I'm not really talking about 500 employees and up. I'm really focused on small businesses, which is almost entirely where we work. And in that world, when you become a partner, when you accept that responsibility, it's typically for life. You're sort of saying, this is a job that I'm going to enter into for the long-term permanent health of the organization. And when that comes to an end, you're bringing up other talent to take on those leadership roles, and in many cases fund your retirement or your downgrade of responsibilities, however you want want to frame it, but that's kind of what we're talking about today. When you become a partner, it removes some of these traditional layers of compensation studies and performance evaluations, job descriptions, work schedules. The traditional way of looking at those topics changes when someone becomes a partner. Regardless of the ownership percentage or the capital investments or the longevity, we're looking today as partners as total leaders of the firm, all in, so to speak. Again, not making any difference of how much you own or don't own. When you become a partner, you're really a permanent leader of that firm. So let's go on and start with some common challenges that these partners face. I'm going to talk through a few of them and tell you some stories of firms that we've seen that have confronted some of these, and hopefully talk with you about some important ideas to keep in mind. So the first common challenge that we see, particularly again in small businesses, is the idea of a shared vision. Thank you very much, team, for advancing the slide for me. I'll pay closer attention to that. It's this idea of a shared vision. I'll never forget early in our evolution when I was out interviewing as many architects who would talk to me, and if any of you watching this were some of those that I called randomly and asked if you would talk with me, I want to share appreciation for that. You helped shape what we are today. But in those interviews, I ran into a small firm that was specialized in residential work, and pretty high-end residential work in a very beautiful part of the country. And I sat down with these two partners. The firm had been around for about 10 years. And I asked them to tell me where this was all going. It's a common question. Those of you who have met me, I'm always interested in what the future of your business looks like. What is the vision for the future of this business? And so we started with the first partner, who went on to talk a lot about the types of projects that he was very excited about. Nothing wrong with that. It happens all the time when I ask people where you want this business to go. Many architects gravitate towards the type of work that they want to do. That's really not the question I'm asking, but nevertheless, it's important. And so he talked on and on about the types of projects, the types of work. Language, to be quite honest with you, I don't totally understand. I'm not an architect. But listened, certainly, be very respectful and empathetic with his position. And he talked for a while about this, and then kind of came to a conclusion. I looked at the other partner, and he had this look of awe on his face, of fear, honestly. And he's staring at his partner. Again, these people had been in business for a decade. And I said, so what is your vision for the future of this business? And he looks at his partner, and he says, I want to stop working 70 or 80 hours a week. So it was a long period of silence, and it was very clear that these two partners had gotten very wrapped up into the growth of the business, winning the business, the work, the design, the fundamentals of keeping the place growing and being a well-respected and even making some money, staying in business for as long as they had in a highly competitive market. But what they had not done was take the time to really talk about what it is they both wanted from this business long term. As surprising as that story sounds, it's not uncommon. So having that shared vision for where you want to go, what you want this to look like, how many employees you want this to have, the types of employees that you want to gain, that's so critical for partners to really delve into that with each other. What is your vision in today's market? Many firms are trying to wrestle with where are we headed with this idea of remote work? Are we going to allow people to work remotely? Are we going to ask them to come in 1 or 2 days a week? What kind of culture does that create for us? And partners need to really talk about these issues and be on the same page. To be clear, enter this topic knowing there's no right or wrong answer to these questions. There is the only answer is what is the right path for you? What are you trying to create? What are you, when you identify your goals and your efforts and you create your budgets and your plans, where is this all headed? And making sure that the two partners are really on the same page is critical. So sharing a common vision is really, really important. In the slides, we talk about writing the vision statement and revisiting it annually. I think that's a very, very good exercise. And it might come to some very personal conversations too about where you want this business to go and what it does for you, because it's all intertwined. In the world of small businesses, we all know in my mind, there's really no such thing as work-life balance. At least in my experience, that term it's really a myth, quite honestly, because it's all blended. We're just not naturally prone to compartmentalize that way. And in a small business, when you're doing such a vast amount of things and so many different unexpected things rely on your time and attention, it's almost impossible to carve out those boundaries. So it's really important that you and your partner or partners all have this very open, honest conversation about where this is all headed. All right, I'm going to go into a second common challenge. I'm going to do a little fun exercise here. Now, if you can send me an email after this is all over and tell me what movie that's from, it's one of my favorites. We'll do a drawing for a fun prize and send you a note. But a failure to communicate is, without any question, one of the top challenges partners see. I can promise you, I have had partners tell me that they have not spoken to their other partner in more than a year. They work together side by side on a daily basis, and they have not spoken to one another in any meaningful way. Certainly they say hello when they're getting coffee, but they literally have not communicated. Now, hopefully, the overwhelming majority of people in this call would not fall into that category. However, there's communication and then there's communication, right? Just talking. It's not just the fun, comfortable stuff. It's the critical stuff. It's the open and vulnerable stuff. If no one on this call, if you haven't read Brené Brown, I highly recommend her. She is a profound writer, professional in the social work field. She talks a lot about feelings and emotions and how we connect as human beings. And I'm always just fascinated with her work on vulnerability and the importance of being vulnerable. It's the only way you get to these deep relationships, and business partnerships are no exclusion. So you definitely want to talk with your business partner about the things that are working and not working. So here are some things to think about communication. We do, like probably many people listening to this, you have staff meetings, partner roundtable meetings, a variety of different touch-based meetings, and they can often get sidelined for clients or difficult employee issues. Sometimes it's the first thing to get moved or canceled. We really encourage you to make those standard communication meetings set in stone and immovable. Really, in those meetings, define what's working, what hasn't worked, what you want to accomplish in the next quarter. We have one firm that we work with where the partners are very religious about taking quarterly trips. They schedule something fun, but during that trip, they have some time where they really talk about what's worked in the past quarter, what the goals are for the future quarter, and they don't miss that trip. It's really important to maintaining their level of communication. There's some other important points on the slides that we'll address, but that pretty much captures it. I don't think I'm telling anybody anything new when I express the importance of honest, open, and transparent communication. The firms that are struggling the most that we work with and have one or more partnerships are typically the ones who are avoiding those uncomfortable conversations. They're putting it aside. They're waiting for something else to solve the conflict. And it almost never works, right? It creates more problems in the long run. It may feel like your immediate solution is the only thing that works, when in reality, it's just deepening the wounds. Highly encourage you to address those uncomfortable issues. One partner's not carrying their weight. One partner's talking over the other all the time. One partner is obsessed with design without regard to budget or schedules. These are things that have to be addressed openly and honestly as a partnership group. So that's two critical challenges that we see, and highly encourage you to think about those and work on overcoming them. I'm going to stop there, Courtney. I don't have the dashboard in front of me because I have the slide deck. Are there any questions that I can answer at this point?
Let me take a look in the QA chat.
And
we had a lot of responses though about your movie.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, send me an email with the name of the movie. Thank you, and we'll do a little drawing, and I'll send you a note with something fun.
Perfect. You can find his email in the profile in the console, or I can just send it in the link as well, or the intended chat as well. We do have a question. How do you justify standardizing these processes when you are a micro firm? If you have limited time to draft policy for a first of 2 or 3, then what do you recommend we prioritize?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I'm going to interpret micro firm as 2 or 3 people, still probably early in your phase of growth. And, like most of the people probably on this call who have grown beyond that size and are now in the 10, 15, 20 person or more stages, they all are going to relate to your question. We've all been there. If you've started a firm at all from scratch, you know that when it's 2 or 3 people, it's everybody doing everything, and it feels chaotic. And I totally respect the burden of responsibility that's on you and the demand for your time. However, I still believe that many of the things we're talking about today are as important as getting the work done for that client. And sometimes you have to take the financial reality of that. You have to carve out a percentage of your time to be committed to these healthy relationships and healthy partnerships. And that means there's time that would otherwise be billable that you're going to have to carve out for this. If you're looking to build a successful firm that's going to grow over time, then you have to be able to invest not only the cash it takes to invest in things like branding and marketing and websites and doing all of that kind of stuff. You also have to be able to invest in the human capital, the leadership that's going to become a part of your DNA. And if you don't invest, if you think you're going to wait until you're 8, 9, or 10 people to have the time, it just doesn't work. Even the firms on this call who are at that size would tell you, you don't feel like you have a ton more time at 10 people than you do when you're at 3. Probably even those of you that are leading firms of 50 or 60 people don't feel like you have the time. So the importance of carving out that time does not change with the size, and you've just got to do it. You've got to take the time to communicate. It's the same thing as if you're in a family and you're starting a family and you have young children that are constantly counting on you. You're running from one errand to the next and one athletic thing to the next or theater thing to the next. You still have to intentionally take the time to work on the relationship. It's critical. Other questions, Courtney? And Courtney, am I showing the right slide? On my screen is the avoid communication issues. Is that what everybody's seeing?
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you.
And then the other question we have is from Steve. Are you suggesting the quote unquote core group not needing to be all of the partners or owners?
So I think I understand the question, which is, in the beginning I said that some firms have terms like associate or assistant principals, and they have, a core group of leadership. What I'm really talking about today are partners who have made, this permanent commitment to the firm. They're owning an equity stake, and they're sort of all in. It's a life decision to lead this firm. Again, typically this applies to firms under 20 people where we're still, getting it off the ground. We're still moving it to a place that's going to live beyond the current owners. And so it requires the people that are leading the firm to have these very close relationships. It's not uncommon for there to be another layer outside of that core group, to use your term. But what I'm really discussing are the people that are considered a part of the permanent future of the firm, and they've taken the steps to do so. So they've either bought in, or they've been granted equity, and they are coming into that core leadership group and shedding really roles and responsibilities we'll talk about in a second, but they're shedding job titles for the most part. They're shedding things that are really more traditional in an employee career path. When you come into that partner room, things change. You're there to make the company successful, to put the company before yourself, to think about the long-term picture rather than your next step on the career path. That's really what I'm talking about. Some firms, there might be some layers that wouldn't qualify for that definition, but that's what I'm talking about today. All right, let me go on to the next challenge, which is related to that answer. And the next challenge really is this everyone does everything example. Now, for those of you that are sports fans, or if you've ever worked in a commercial kitchen like I have, or even parents, you know that it's pretty much impossible for those systems to operate if you don't have very specific lanes for everyone to stay in. If your sports team, if every player on the field believes that they are the goalie, or in a commercial kitchen, if every person believes that they can run from station to station doing anything that they want to do, or if parents believe that there's no division of responsibilities, you're both going to do everything, we all know the outcome is catastrophe, certainly wasted resources, and confusion, and in many cases, hurt feelings, costly mistakes, and disengaged individuals. In many of the firms that we've studied and worked with, when we look at turnover, a lot of the times we can contribute a fairly significant amount of responsibility that contributed to a high turnover rate and employee dissatisfaction. We can really attribute it to leaders not staying in their lane, not understanding the different roles and responsibilities that exist within each person's participation. So everybody doing everything is not possible as you grow as an organization. Now, the hard part, as many of you watching this know, is that you go from starting a firm where everybody does do everything at one or two people, right? Because there's nobody else to do it. In transitioning as you grow to really defining what those responsibilities are and letting go of a lot of those responsibilities. We deal with a lot of firm owners that have trouble letting go. They have control issues because they created the organization. And I get it. I totally get it. I've been in that seat. But the only way to make an efficient organization and to really reduce some of that job dissatisfaction that I mentioned is by continually defining what lanes each of those owners, each of those partners needs to stay in. Know what each person is responsible for. Regularly evaluate what each person is responsible for and overcome some of those control issues, accept that there's a larger group of people doing the work now, and it's not all going to be done the way you would do it. There are going to be mistakes that are made, some of them costly mistakes. That's part of growing a business. It's part of building an organization. that is going to grow beyond yourself. Everyone says that they want to avoid job titles and organization charts because they're too corporate. I hear it almost every week. The result of an overly cautious or overly resistant approach to that is real ambiguity and a high level of waste, confusion, and cost, because the firm has not done an adequate job of defining roles and responsibilities within the group. Highly recommend a book to you all. It's not on our recommended reading list at the end of this, but it's The Who, Not Why by Dan Sullivan. Very, very good book. You may not go to the extremes that Dan has, but he really talks about the importance of empowering the who around you to really get the job done. But certainly a common challenge among firms with multiple partners is everyone trying to do everything and not really paying attention to who needs to do what. All right, I'm going to go on to common challenge number 4, different leadership styles. So again, as I said in the beginning, language is very important. So what does leadership really mean? And I think it's important for partners to have a conversation about what they feel leadership means. Put that down as a topic during your next lunch or your next partner meeting to really gather feedback from the audience. You might be surprised of what some of the impressions are of what leadership really means. In my mind, it's about guiding the firm. It's about setting direction, paying attention to the overall health of the organization. Leadership really is setting that tone, setting that example, and then really paying attention to the course of the organization and addressing and confronting issues that threaten that course, that plan that we've put in place. Using your resources to call attention to things that need to be paid attention to, not necessarily micromanaging, but empowering others to pay attention to them too. Leaders take their life experiences, their knowledge, their abilities, and they find ways to share and serve others, to share that with the rest of the organization and serve others in the organization so that they can be successful and they can make the company successful. I firmly believe that. Jim Collins certainly talked about the level 5 leader in the book, Good to Great. The servant leader, I think, is very, very important. I think it's the way to be an effective leader. That doesn't mean that because you're a good designer and a good architect that you're a good leader. It doesn't mean that you're not, but the two are very different roles that you can play in an organization. And we do find many firms that have been around for a long time, they have long-standing employees who have contributed a lot to the success of the organization, lean towards promotion and advancing their career in recognition of that performance. It's sort of like the age-old dilemma of taking a phenomenal salesperson and promoting them to be a sales manager. And they're a terrible sales manager. So you did two things. You took the best salesperson you had off the line, out of the market, and you put them in a position where they fail as a manager and then to cause more harm to the sales team than good. Something that partners really need to take into account is the importance of leadership abilities does not necessarily equate to what the person's job performance has been in the past. Partners, you have a serious influence over the leadership tone that you set in the organization. The values that you find terribly important to being a good leader are the ones that that are going to drive whether someone can fit that role or not. So be clear about what those are. Self-awareness is very, very important. I highly encourage partners to really work with each other to make sure that you're being very self-aware. You're helping each other be aware of your strengths and weaknesses, and that you're open to those strengths and weaknesses. Ego's checked at the door. Your own personal success often is checked at the door. When you accept the role of partner and you enter that room as partners to talk about the organization, you're leaving that behind. You're there to help the business grow. And whatever's good for the business is where your focus is. So I would also encourage you all to think about outside counsel. Certainly CBG provides that for our clients, but there are many qualified professionals in this marketplace who can give you an honest reflection on your role as a leader in the organization. I highly recommend things like executive coaches, executive MBA programs, of course, and other training resources that help you grow as a leader. It can be very, very helpful. So work on your personal evolution as an individual. Work on your own personal growth, and that will help you perform better as a leader and help your partnership group serve the firm better as leaders. So that's challenge number 4, be aware of different leadership styles. I guess one of the things I didn't mention in that is there are the micromanagers, there are the people that are obsessed with the details, then there are the people that, believe that leadership is standing at the top of the mountain and looking out over the valley, never setting foot down on the earth. I'm not going to talk about which one is right or wrong today, but certainly it's not uncommon for different partners to have different styles as to how they approach leadership, which comes back to my original point that you as a partner, whether it's 2 or 5 or 10, you need to be talking about what leadership means to you and what you find important. And you need to be evaluating before you bring on new partners into your group, evaluating that individual's perception of leadership. What values do they hold close to their heart about leadership and service to the talent pool? So there we go. There's challenge 4. Courtney, I'm going to stop there before I go into challenge 5. Are there any other questions?
Hi, Todd. Yes, there are some, but we are at the 40-minute mark if you want to maybe wait until the end and we can ask those.
Sure.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll go on to the next few and then move on to the Q&A. So just give us a few more minutes, a few more key ideas here, and then I'll move on to addressing some of the questions that have been posted. So challenge number 5, long distance partnerships. This, of course, is a hot topic in today's market because so many firms are dealing with remote workers, considering satellite offices. It seems like in the post-pandemic era, everyone didn't just run back to the office and continue doing business as usual. I don't feel like we've ever come back to that, nor do I feel like we ever will come back to a pre-pandemic way of doing business. It's changed, and I think it's changed forever. So, there really is no right answer here, to be honest with you. As I said earlier, it's about finding the model that works best for your firm, for your culture, for your employees. You need to build what works for your firm. And in some cases, that may mean satellite offices and remote workers. I certainly would not encourage you to continue to believe in the importance of physical face-to-face interaction. It definitely has more value per minute than distance. And I say that coming to you as a person who's worked in the virtual space now for 10 years. But that face-to-face interaction is so valuable and so important. So if you do choose to embrace a satellite office, entering a new market, you really do have to work on maintaining some regular face-to-face interaction. You also have to really work hard at fighting this silo mentality, not allowing the us and them barriers to begin to evolve. We do find firms that struggle with satellite locations dealing with processes being different for one location than another. Now, sometimes that arises organically because of the the staff that are in one location versus another. You may have project architects all in one location and production people in another location, and it just tends to evolve that way. But you really have to fight that silo mentality and be very, very consistent in the way you embrace and enforce processes and set the expectations that those are consistent for you. The other thing I'll say about this remote work and remote partner challenge that many firms face is to be very clear about what you expect from this investment. So many firms go down this avenue without really exhaustively asking themselves, what is it that we want that investment of time, energy, and money, what is it that we want that to do for the overall business? If we're going to enter a new market in 3 years, should that be producing an extra $500,000 in revenue or an additional $1 million in revenue? And how are we going to measure that? Or do we believe that that other location is going to help us recruit more people? Well, then we should be able to measure that by the number of new employees we're able to hire in that market. You know, be very clear about what you expect that investment to do, and you'll avoid a lot of pain and confusion down the road and inconsistent expectations. Again, I wish there was a perfect answer for everyone. We see a lot of firms very successful at embracing remote work, remote locations, some even using overseas labor, which I know is a big issue in today's market. We see firms that are successful at it, and we see firms who just have found it not to work for them. And I can honestly tell you, in knowing a lot of those cases very closely, there's no magic pill. There's not one solution for every firm. And that's your responsibility as a partner, as an owner, to work with your leadership group to find the right answer for you and evaluate it and constantly work on it to try to make it work. All right, next challenge is this idea of ownership transition. It's so often put off and put aside and not talked about. And we really encourage firms to talk about it openly and honestly. You can't begin discussing an ownership transition early enough. You know, what I mean by that is the partners to talk about where they plan to exit the business, when they plan to exit a business. Now, let me tell you this. If I had $1 for every person that told me they were going to retire next year and was still working full-time 5 years later, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So I get it. Talking about it does not make it reality. However, it does not mean that you shouldn't talk about what you want, what your dreams are, what your plan is. And sometimes you may say, Todd, we have no idea. I'm 50 years old and I don't know when I'm going to ever slow down. Fine, have that conversation, right? To say that, you know, it's my belief I'm going to be here until I drop. Partners don't talk about this nearly enough. You also don't nearly talk about nearly enough is how you're nurturing young talent to come into leadership roles so that they're there to begin taking over ownership when people do want to begin to exit the business. I'm very hesitant to use the word retire because it's just not what it was in my grandfather's day when he worked for the same company for 40 years and then had a retirement celebration and then stayed home and did the things around the house that he wanted to do. It's just not the way it works in today's world anymore, and particularly in the world of architecture. Many of you tell me that you don't see yourself ever not being an architect at some level. So you need to talk about what that means. Does that mean letting go of management responsibilities, not being a partner? What does that strategy look like? And how are you opening up doors for future leadership and ownership to begin coming into the organization so that you can begin to do more of the things that you want to do? The other thing I would say about ownership transition is so many firms give it away too easily. You're trying to recruit a new architect. You're trying to bring in senior talent. Let's give them some equity. That'll bring them in. Many firms do this without adequate thought about what that means. You all have worked to build this asset. It is valuable. You shouldn't give it away easily. There should be some clear expectations as to what it takes to gain equity in a firm. And we recommend you don't even consider it until the person has worked for you for at least a year, hopefully longer, before you even begin having a conversation about an equity position in the firm. Let me jump to number 7 real quick, and then I'll start addressing some questions, is this idea of a lack of trust. I just don't know how it happens. I don't know how you find yourself in a partnership with business partners who own a part of the same company you do, and you don't trust them. If that's the case, I highly recommend you address it now. Accept the tough pill of having that conversation. If you're the majority owner and you have other owners that you simply don't trust, you got to work your way out of that. You can't be in a business partnership with people you don't trust. You don't have to like them. You don't have to love them. You don't even have to enjoy being around them. But you sure have to have a basic level of trust that they will live the values they say are important to them, that they are the people that you believe they are and that they say they are. If that's not the case, I don't know how you stay in a business partnership with them. So on the other side of that coin, you should have partners that you do trust and that you can walk into the room and talk about virtually anything with. The red flags go off in my head all the time when I have clients tell me, okay, we're going to have a meeting, Todd, but I don't want to invite so-and-so and so-and-so, even though they're partners and owners of the company, because they're not aware of salaries, they're not aware of finances and all of this. That is a major red flag. If you have owners and people who own equity stakes in the business and are considered partners. Now, I'm not talking about you're giving out shares of stock and equity to longstanding employees and doing that to engage people and keep them involved. I'm talking about partners who are charged with running this business and keeping this company going for the long term. That is a group of people that should be able to talk about anything with one another, no matter how difficult it is. So trust is extremely important. I believe it's critical. And very important, and I think you have to work at it. And then, as you all know, there are a million books written about trust, a million resources to learn more about how to nurture it, how to gain it, how to give it. But it starts with vulnerability and sharing common values. All right, I hope I didn't put anybody to sleep. I'm sorry for talking at you for 45 minutes. I do want to say, before we take questions, I just want to thank our host of today's webinar, BQE Core. If you'd like to learn more about Core, how it can help you manage your staff, time, expenses, and even make your relationships with your partners better by giving them real-time insights into the business, which I think are really, really important. And I encourage you to request a demo from the people at Core. There's some poll questions on your screen on the right. We'll leave that up to the next few minutes. And now I'm going to move on to the Q&A. Courtney, why don't you guide me, and I'll answer as many as you allow me to answer.
Yep, I'll go ahead and get started on that. First question from Adam. Is it fair, as an individual recently promoted to the role of partner, to expect equal say on the vision and the direction of the firm, considering that my ownership shares in the firm are considerably lower than those of the founding partners?
Great question, Adam. I wish I could have written that myself. It's a great question, and one that I hope others may have. So 2 answers. The first is, it is 100% fair for you to expect it to be listened to and to provide input and to give opinions about the vision for the future of the firm and where you want the firm to go. The second answer is, at the end of the day, the person that owns the majority of the firm is charged with making the decisions to make that firm run. So I do believe, by granting you the title of partner and bringing you into the partner world, that the owners of the firm they have to be open to listening to your input. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to make the decision, and the owner is the person that's life is on the line. And don't ever forget that the owner of the firm is the one who gets sued. They're the one that the bank wants to know. They're the one the lawyers want to know. Minority owners, they don't care about. So you've still got a majority owner that has ultimate responsibility for the direction of the firm. However, it doesn't take away the fact that you should 100% feel listened to and a part of that conversation. But you also have to respect the fact that their life is on the line, their name is on the line, and they're charged with making those tough decisions. I hope that helps.
Perfect, thank you. Next question we have is from Christopher. He asks, can you comment on the power dynamic when one partner controls the 51% majority of the shares and believes that they are the ultimate decider, and how to navigate this?
Well, if I was a lawyer, I would tell you that they are absolutely right. Lawyers and accountants would tell you that the 51% is all that matters. Anything outside of that, you're a minority owner. So, that is the reality. That is the way the law sees it. It's the way finances see it. While things can get dicey, and there can certainly be gray areas when someone is a 49% owner and has given an enormous amount to the firm, there's cases that can be made that they have more responsibility. But at the end of the day, it is the 51% owner that matters. I still believe that person, I am a majority owner of CBG, but there's not a chance in hell that this company would only be where it is because of the leaders that are a part of the CBG community. And it would be stupid of me to not listen and engage all of them. They've helped create this place. So, a good leader, the percentage really doesn't matter. A good leader and owner knows that they're not going to grow this company by themselves, and therefore they've got to engage other leaders and owners in those kinds of conversations. I hope that helps.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. How do you recommend navigating the dynamics of differing ownership stakes within the company when there may be several partners at different ownership percentages, stakes that overrule those that may be, similar question.
Yeah, it is. All of them very similar. It's the dynamics between percentage of ownership. And, I don't want to beat a dead horse. All of the owners who have taken the responsibility of having an equity stake in the firm need to be listened to. I wouldn't buy in, nor would I accept equity in a firm where I didn't trust that was going to be the case. I would need some reassurances from the majority owner or owners that would be the case. It would be the only reason I would own a stake in that business. However, the reality is the majority owner rules. They make the decisions. They're tasked with making those decisions. And, financially, there's no way around that. But it doesn't change the reality, which is, as a minority owner, you are making a commitment to the greater good of the firm and should be listened to when you're talking about the vision and the future of the firm.
Perfect, thank you. Next question we have. What are your thoughts on establishing a board of directors group for a firm of 25 with 3 partners? Does it make sense?
Absolutely, and I would begin working on it right away. I 100% believe it makes sense. I would change the term to a board of advisors if you're privately held and you're not going to require the individuals to have fiduciary responsibility or legal responsibility over the firm, then they are nothing more than advisors. However, if you're going to form a board of advisors that are going to give their time and energy to helping advise you on how to run the firm, you better listen to them, right? So, but a board of advisors is a very, very healthy thing to do. I recommend that be no more than 5 or 6 individuals who have a strong level of experience in your field. They can help you open doors to new clients. You can look for ones that have specialties in areas like legal or accounting, maybe ownership transition, or depending upon what the needs of the firm are. But I would shape that group right away. We have examples of roles and responsibilities for those boards. We help firms set up boards of advisors all the time. Don't hesitate to contact us. Very, very good move for a firm of that size. Meeting typically 3, maybe 4 times a year, and typically compensating the board members with a small stipend for a day's work or whatever time it may be that you're going to require them for a year. They're not typically not doing it for the money. It's just a chance to reward them in some way for the time that they're giving you. And then if you do have one meeting in person a year or more, typically firms pay for lodging and travel to do that. But Board of Advisors, very, very positive step for a firm of 25.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd. Before we move to the next question, did you want to speak on this CVG poll that I'll launch right now?
Sure. Is this what I'm looking at? Okay.
Now
so
it's up.
Okay, sure. Yeah, follow up with me if you're interested. CVG, as I said, we've been around for 10 years. I won't do a big long commercial, but we specialize in working with small and mid-sized firms. We've got an incredible team of people, everything from marketing to recruitment to leadership development, everything related to running the business. We help firms with holistic. We take a very holistic approach. We're not your web design firm just designing a website. We look at it in terms of the entire firm and where you're headed, what your vision is. So contact us, reach out to us. We have tons of resources on our website. You can email us, have appointments with us. I'll also just mention to you, I am taking sort of a cross-country trip, leaving next week and throughout the month of November, taking my Jeep and my tent and visiting our clients all over the east side of the country, up through Minneapolis, Ohio, West Virginia, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama. Would love, if anybody's out there, would love to meet or keep an eye on our trip. We'll have a ton of stuff on social media, but it's kind of symbolic of the kind of firm that we are. We get out, we see our clients, we work in the field with you. As I said, we've been virtual from day one. Reach out to us. We'd love to get to know you.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
I could go ahead and ask one more last question while people take a look at the resources slide. Should larger shareholders also have a larger responsibility distribution in regards to the everyone does everything issue and partner roles plus responsibilities?
So my immediate answer is no. The majority shareholder does not automatically mean that person should have more responsibility. It does mean that person has more legal responsibility and fiduciary responsibility towards the firm. I would hope you could be majority shareholder and not do any of the work. That would be fantastic, right? So I don't think that there's any correlation between majority shares or minority shares and your assignment of responsibilities. I think that should be something that you all agree to as a leadership group. As the majority shareholder, you clearly come to the table with undeniable levels of responsibility. You are, as I said earlier, you are the one who will be sued. You are the one who will take a pay cut when you can't make payroll. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you automatically are the one to make all of the decisions in the firm. It's not uncommon at all for a majority shareholder to have senior staff that are compensated to take on more of those management responsibilities, day-to-day responsibilities, and so forth. So you have to pick the model that works for the firm. And and definitely, define those levels of responsibilities and roles. In the same way, the minority shareholder doesn't automatically have, veto powers over a hire or a vision for the future of the firm. I would say the same thing applies to the majority shareholder. Yes, you clearly have the power to do those things, but you want to engage others. You want others to feel involved and responsible. It doesn't have to be that way instantly. So I hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right.
It does look like we are out of time for questions. I'd just like to thank everyone for attending this webinar, and we'll be sure to send you the recording link for this webinar by email so you can rewatch or share. Thank you so much, Todd, for educating us on this topic. We hope you all enjoyed today's session and hope to see you at the next webinar. Please fill out the survey we have to let us know what topics you're interested in, and if you want a demo with Core or are interested in learning more about CVG. If you are interested in future events, please visit our events page on bqe.com, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.